Hi guys, Allison here, the Bored Housewife. Thank you so much for joining me for another week's episode. Um, Please like, comment, subscribe, check out my social media pages. If you are enjoying the sort of things that I am bringing to you through this podcast, I've been posting a lot more on social media, some like inspirational quotes and philosophical ideas and things like that. So definitely kind of fun to check that out. But yeah, so this week, new month, woohoo! Welcome April. Uh, so this month, I am starting out with this idea of identity. Last month, when we talked about the book, the War of Art book, and talking about the resistance and things like that, there were a lot of questions I found myself asking and thinking about, and one of them was identity and who I am and how, like, what identity is and all of that sort of thing. So, I wanted to dedicate the first two episodes of this month to talking about that. I went on a crazy spiraling rabbit hole of my own mind when I started thinking of this. I have reread this book. Funny story. I This is called The Outsider by Albert Camus. I already had it. The English version, the UK version, is called The Outsider. The American version is called The Stranger. So did not realize that and purchased this thinking I didn't have it. And I already had it, and I'd already read it. So, but I am reading it with a fresh eye and with a, different perspective and just more maturity. And it's telling me a lot more things. So I'm excited to talk about this a little bit. Um, but yeah, we're going to talk about identity, and it's a little complicated. So I'm breaking this up into two episodes because I do not want this to be crazy and, spirally and try to fit it all into one episode. It's definitely something that you need to think on. So we're going to talk a little bit about this week, and then we're going to talk about more of it next week. And if I have any more ideas on it, I'll do a third week, but I think it'll just be the 2 weeks. So, I don't know. Okay. Actually, we'll see how next week goes. And if I need to do a third episode, then I'll do a third episode. So, anyways, I am drinking a nice big glass of rosé tonight. Again, very refreshing. So please grab your glass of wine or beverage of choice, whatever you may be sipping on this evening or whenever you're listening or watching to this. And cheers, guys. Let's have some fun. Okay, so before we get too far into a few things, the first thing I want to share with you is this song I heard when I swear I heard it on the plane when I was moving from New York to LA. And a little backstory on that, like, I was really apprehensive of moving to LA. I've never really wanted to live there, and I moved there for career opportunities, and it was really hard. And so I kind of left New York. I left all my stuff in storage, and I was just like, I'll probably be back. And I like apologized to some of my friends later. I was like, that was kind of shitty of me. I just was like, I'm just gonna put my stuff in storage and I'll probably be back. But I didn't really say goodbye. Like, I mean, we still kept in touch and stuff, but it was just like I never went back. And so it was kind of weird. And after being there for like 6 months and then finally getting a job and whatnot, I was like, yeah, I can't go back to New York. I have to stay in LA until I got married, and all that changed too. But But it was a really hard choice, and it was a really weird time for me. I was going through like a crazy breakup and needed one that really needed to happen. And making this huge life choice, taking a chance on getting this job and all of that. And I'm flying to LA from New York, nonstop flight, and this song comes on, and it's a Neil Diamond song, and I love Neil Diamond, okay? And it's not one of his more popular ones, but it's still a really great song, and it's called I Am, I Said, and that's the title of this episode this week, because it's just one of those where you have like a loss of identity sort of thing. And so the the first lyrics go like this. Okay. Well, I mean, the song starts, but these are the lyrics that stick out to me. So, I'm New York City born. I'm New York City born and raised, but nowadays I'm lost between two shores. LA's fine, but it ain't home. New York's home, but it ain't mine no more. Yeah. So even though I wasn't born and raised in New York City, I always say that like I was I was raised in Iowa, I grew up in New York, and then I moved to LA. That's what I used to tell people when I first moved to LA. Because I did a lot of growing up in New York, and when I first went to New York in my teens, it totally stole my heart, and it still has my heart. I love that city so much. And so um, it was really hard to leave, and I really felt the sense of like, who am I anymore? Because if you live in New York and you love living in New York, there's definitely identity that you take on living there because it's so difficult to live there. It's not easy unless you're like super rich. But if you're just like an average person, it's really hard to, you know, just do normal things like go to the grocery store, get your laundry done, all that sort of stuff. And so you definitely take it on as part of your identity. This like grit and grime of the city kind of becomes a part of you. So anyways, I totally felt those lyrics because I was just like, yeah, LA is like a nice city and it's going to give me a lot of opportunities, but like I just don't identify with anything here. Like I don't identify with the culture or the lifestyle or anything like that. And then it goes on to say, I said, to no one there, and no one heard at all, not even the chair, which in next week's episode I'm going to bring up again because it's very important to my idea of what identity is. And I say my idea because I haven't necessarily found this in any sort of book or anything like this. It's just me contemplating about things and thinking about philosophical ideas, and this came to mind, and I think it fits really well. And so I'm going to explain a lot more about that next week. But anyways, I'll read that line again when we get there. And then he says, I cried, I am, said I, and I am lost, and I can't even say why, leaving me lonely still. So, he's just very sad and lonely in his, loss of identity here. He no longer really knows where he fits in. Like, I don't really fit in New York anymore because that's in my past and I've decided to move on to something else. But I'm not really embodying the city either. And I think a lot of times when we think of identity, where we live, where we were raised, all that sort of stuff definitely plays in, right? So there's definitely a loss of feeling and identity there for him. And I just have always very much resonated with that song. I still do, because I think a little bit about where you live definitely puts a lot of that into who you are. And yes, you can evolve and you can move on from that. Sometimes you decide that you live somewhere forever and it's like, oh, this is no longer who I am. But what do you do when you leave somewhere and you're not done with it yet? It's like it doesn't just go away. It's still a part of you. So, planning for this episode, I wanted to start reading this book or rereading the book, because I kind of looked up like identity and philosophy, and this was a book that came up. And the reason why it came up is because, and this was really kind of interesting. The first time I read this book, I just kind of read it. And I'll get more into this next week, but I was reading it being like, I think that if I read this, this makes me a deep and complicated person. It says something. So the author is Albert Camus. He is a absurdist philosopher. An absurdist is somebody is a type of absurdism, is a type of philosophy that is very similar to existentialism, but it's slightly different. And Albert Camus would definitely not define himself as an existentialist, and so he is an absurdist. And so an absurdist is somebody, and this is really broad, okay? I literally got this off of Wikipedia. Go look up absurdism or absurdist on Wikipedia, and you'll get a great overview. But obviously, if you want to continue to study more about what that is and what that kind of philosophy is, reading Albert Camus, reading Kierkegaard, and just getting into other, trying to look up other readings would definitely help you. Also reading existentialist philosophers as well, it would be great into kind of having a little bit more understanding of this mindset. But absurdism is the place between creating meaning and realizing the world is meaninless. So, the absurd is this place where you're kind of like going in your life, and all this stuff that we've been talking about, like finding your meaning, finding your value, putting yourself into these works, all that. Like, I'll say Camus definitely doesn't believe in a higher power or anything like that. I really identify, I guess I could say identify, but I really like the absurd philosophy a lot. I don't agree with all of it, so I wouldn't say I'm like 100% like an absurdist, but I think it gives a really nice answer to things. So you're just living your life, walking along, looking for meaning, trying to find all this stuff. And then you have this moment, and some people might call it like an existential crisis, and this is why they say they're very close in nature, where you realize that nothing matters, There's that other song, Is That All There Is, that I think of when I think of that sort of like existential crisis, or even Bohemian Rhapsody is totally an existential crisis. If you really listen to the lyrics, you'll realize that he's at this place in his life where, I think he even says, nothing really matters. At the end of the song, nothing really matters to me, or something. I don't know. Let me sing for you guys here. No. But it's totally an existential song. And so it's just that point in your life when you're doing all this stuff and it's like, oh my God, I'm like breaking my back and all of it. And then you just, some people don't have these moments. Some people just continue to like, even if those little things kind of creep up, they're like, nope, I can't face that sort of reality. So the absurd is that moment of, I've been working my whole life trying to make meaning, and now I've just realized that it's meaningless. None of this matters. I'm just gonna die anyways, right? I know, so motivational, Allison. But no, it is, because an absurdist basically gives you several options. One, you can kill yourself, but that is not the answer, obviously. And I'm saying that lightly because it's so stupid. Like, why would you do that, And so we're not going to talk about, sorry, that got really dark and weird. We're not going to talk about that option, but that is an option. But even to an absurdist or an existentialist, doing something like that would be giving in to the absurd. So you wouldn't be accomplishing anything at all doing that to yourself. You kind of just make the manifestation of what the absurd is even bigger and worse, okay? Because you're giving into it. You could seek a higher power. So then that's when you could, look for a religious escape of somehow. So, yes, my life is meaningful because this isn't it. So, Camus didn't believe in God. So, he believed that whatever we had in this life, like on earth, like this is it. And so this is whatever you do here, this is it. You die and then it doesn't matter afterwards, right? Even if you're incredibly famous, write books, make movies, do all these things that are influential, wrote the Constitution, of America. Doesn't matter, you're dead. So what does it matter if, whatever. So for him, you could look for a higher power, and that's what a lot of people do. And I mean, I believe in God, so that's again another thing that I don't fully align with him. But then he said, or you could just continue to live your life and create meaning. And it's almost like you're creating meaning in spite of the absurd. So you're know that it doesn't mean anything, but if we weren't here, it's almost like the absurd exists with us or without us, and it exists more so, well, the absurd doesn't exist without us, okay? So that's kind of why, if we all die, like every single person on the planet just poofed, was gone, there would be nothing, right? Because there would be no motive, like there would be no moving forward in any sort of way. So it's just one of those that's kind of like, this doesn't mean anything, but it wouldn't mean anything if I wasn't here. It's like, so this is where it gets kind of complicated. If you guys are super interested in this, please let me know. We can do a whole other episode kind of trying to talk about this sort of stuff. But I just wanted to give you a brief overview. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to get too heady here. But it's basically deciding that even though if you're going to go based off of Camus, okay, realizing that there's no meaning in the world and still creating meaning for yourself, still saying to yourself, well, okay, what else am I going to do with my time here, right? What else am I going to do while I'm alive? Like, I still have to eat to keep myself alive. I still have to, bathe myself to keep me alive. Like, there's certain essential things that I have to do to keep me alive. So why, doing those sorts of things, then maybe I'll take it a step further. If I have to do a job, why not do a job about something that I enjoy or that I like? Or, if I have a weekend, why not go and spend the day doing something I enjoy than just staring at the wall? It's like that sort of thing versus just sitting in despair and misery, saying to yourself that nothing matters and hating everybody and everything. So, it's kind of, it's that sort of perspective. Anyways, so I started reading this, and part of the book is about the reason why it is about identity is because it's from a narrator point of view, okay? So this guy is telling us the story of his life and what's going on in his life. And as he's telling us, we have, and this is the thing that when I read it before, it totally went over my head. I just was like, oh, interesting story. No, it was actually really interesting story because this guy is telling you like his day-to-day life and his interactions with different people. And we know more about the interactions with these other people than we actually know about him. So we don't know what he looks like. We know like certain details about his life. Like he has a mother who passes away and he goes to the funeral. He has a job that he works at. Like there's certain things like that. Like he has a girlfriend, he has a friend, he has a neighbor. Like there's certain things that we know. We get a glimpse of his desires and his wants every once in a while, but like we don't know like a lot of the reasoning behind any of these sorts of things. We don't know the picture that he's trying to paint for us. We see the picture that's painted in his perception from other people, which is what we'll get into next week. But we don't actually know very much about who he is, what motivates him, all of that sort of stuff, which is part of our identities, right? It's not just enough to say, oh, I like chicken nuggets, like, is there more to the story than you just liking chicken nuggets? I have a cousin who's really picky, and that's like one of the things that she eats. So, me saying I like chicken nuggets is going to be one conversation. Her saying she likes chicken nuggets is an entirely different conversation because that's one of the only things she eats. She's incredibly picky. So, here we are painting a picture for you on who she is versus maybe who I am. I like chicken nuggets, but, it's not something that I eat all the time. I would prefer. And then there's another whole conversation there, right? So we don't learn of that about him in the book, and thus we have no idea what his identity is, okay? Okay. All right, we're going to take a break there, and we'll be right back. Okay, so like I said, the War of Art book just really started getting me thinking about this because I was thinking about it more so too, like, why am I a procrastinator? Why are there certain things in my life that I do? Why am I the way I am? Okay. And I will tell you this week, woof, I've been doing a lot of thinking and I was seriously spiraling. It was rough, guys. I can laugh about it now. Maybe it's because I have a few glasses of wine, but I am a lot better. But, it is important to figure out who we are. And so I first want to give you, so this is one thing that I do, right? When I have a question about something, a lot of times it is the word that I kind of go to first, because then that kind of broadens my idea a little bit. I think sometimes we get really stuck in our head about ideas of what things mean, and it's nice to kind of go to the word and get the definition and kind of get yourself in a headspace, and it might almost open your mind a little bit to what it is. So a lot of times I'll do that first. So I was thinking about identity and I was like, well, okay, how is even identity defined? So hang in here with me. I'm going to read you what I found. So identity is defined by a characteristic. So then I went and Googled the definition of characteristic. Characteristic is defined by a defining trait. So then I went and looked for defining trait. A trait is defined by a distinguishing feature. A feature is defined as a distinctive part. And distinctive is defined as a characteristic. Okay. So, after identity is defined as a characteristic, we just went full circle there. Language is weird. So that was really perplexing to me. Obviously, I can think in my head, right? What these certain things are. A characteristic is something that is uniquely me. And I think when I say that, you guys have an idea of what I'm saying. It could be a physical characteristic. It could be a quirk that I do. Maybe I have a fidget or something. You see actors, really good actors like Christian Bale. He's really good at picking up characteristics from people of how they are when he's doing biopic stuff. But even still, the fact that I go through all these definitions and, I'm also picking out keywords here, right? There's several different words that kind of describe things, but I'm picking out specific words and it leads me back to that word. And that just to me is not satisfying. It's definitions are weird. So, we obviously, with something like identity, characteristic, defining trait, these are more abstract ideas that are hard to just put into a little definition. Instead of saying what is a book, a book is something that has pages in it and paper and typed words. Like, it's very distinct of what a book is, physically anyways. But identity is not a physical thing. It's something that is abstract and, outside of us, and in our heads. And so, trying to talk about it and figure out what it is can be really complicated. But the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because, and this is the question that I wanted to kind of pose, is how can I begin to understand what I want if I don't know where my ideas of myself come from? So I said, this is an important question to ask so you understand what is yours. It is important to have your own identity and not just be a part of someone else's. So I say that because I think, and this is me generalizing here, okay? So if I am completely wrong, you guys call me out, tell me, comment, email me, whatever. If you have my phone number, be like, you're wrong, Allison. But I think as women, we sometimes get sucked into our husband's identity. I think one of the differences between men and women is I think women are much more empathetic than men. Again, I'm totally generalizing, okay? But I think it's in our nature to be more empathetic, more sympathetic because of just who we are, right? Like and I'm trying not to get too psychological here, right? Because I don't really have any business talking about that sort of stuff. And in next episode, when we talk about things, again, like, I don't have any sort of degree that way. It's just, these are all my opinions, guys. But it's like, I think because we're so empathetic, it's kind of like we can get kind of sucked into things sometimes that is we go along with because we can. It's easier for us to adjust maybe than for our husbands to adjust. Or maybe for our certain life scenario, it's, easier for us. And, I have to even catch myself sometimes. Like, there's things that my husband is so sure of and has such ideas on, and I can see his point of view and I can, understand it, but I still have to go back and be like, okay, wait, do I actually agree with that, or am I just understanding of that? And, where is actually my stance on it? We have a lot of different opinions, but I think that as women, it's just a little bit easier to kind of get it mucked up, and you kind of go along, and then you start to lose yourself, and you're like, wait a second, like, where do my ideas start and end, And so I think it's important for that, so that when we're going forward and making, positive life changes and understanding things, that we know where they're coming from. Are they coming from, who we are, or are they coming from somewhere else? Okay, so I used to not really be into hiking at all. It wasn't really my thing. And, excuse me, my voice cracked. And my husband really enjoyed it. And so I gave it a try. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this, but I'm going to give it a try. I really enjoy hiking. Now, there's aspects of it that I really don't enjoy. We've only been on one hike so far here in Okinawa, and I will say it was exhilarating. And I enjoy it for weird reasons. I enjoy being uncomfortable, and I know that sounds weird, but just I think I've shared this with you guys before, like, taking a new class, like going and maybe sitting in a bar by myself with a glass of wine and seeing what happens, like, even if no one talks to me, just that, like, adrenaline, that aspect of it is just, like, exciting to me. So I enjoy the actual physical aspect of hiking, but I am terrified of the critters in nature. I think nature is beautiful. I love to look at it. It feels so good to be in it, but I am so paranoid the entire time. And here in Okinawa, there are venomous snakes and giant ass spiders everywhere, and it's scary. Okay, so we went on this hike and it was totally a mild hike. It wasn't even that adventurous, but there were just like leaves everywhere. And my husband, for the first time I've ever really seen, was like being super cautious. Okay, and I was just like, oh my God. um, but like we both got two different things out of that. But like before, like I didn't realize I'd ever liked hiking, and so now I know that it is truly something that I enjoy. But my point of it telling you this is that like some people might do certain things and participate in certain activities that they're like, I don't really like this. I go along with it to spend time with my husband, or I go along with it because my friends do it, but it's not actually something that I like, and it's not like really part of my identity. And so those are the sorts of things that we have to look out for. Like for me, the way I talk, you might not think that I would be into hiking because I'm totally terrified of bugs and snakes and critters, but I find it exciting. So there's that. Okay, so this other example that I want to give is one about the military lifestyle, because I feel like are there's quite a bit of military wives who identify with their husband's success, and I'm sure this also happens in the civilian world as well, where you have like the CEO's wife or the president's wife or the VP's wife, all that sort of stuff. I mean, like even at our federal level, right? We have like the first lady, like that holds like a certain stature because of who your husband is, right? But at the same time, it's just like, do I add some sort of success, like, or help, like, my husband's success? Yeah, but I came in at such a late time. Like, he had already accomplished so much before I even came in the picture. I assume that women who have been there from maybe the beginning, from when they first entered the Marine Corps military, probably have more feeling towards this because they've had to go through more shit. But it's like, even if they are, the commandant of the Marine Corps, like that is their career. They take on, that's part of their identity, right? But it's weird because there's like wives that will like, oh, my husband is a gunny. Oh, my husband is an officer. Oh, my husband is a staff sergeant. Oh, my husband is whatever. And it's like they kind of hold it to other wives. They'll hold it to, expecting certain entitlements and just different things. And it's kind of a weird culture. And it's not like you find it all the time, but it's definitely there, and you run into it in weird moments even. So the reason, like we as military wives definitely make a lot of sacrifices, and so I will say that it's just like I can totally understand where these women start to take on their husband's sort of identity in that sort of way, because it's like, if you don't have any other values or meaning in your life and you're constantly being drug around everywhere, like the military lifestyle definitely ends up being part of your identity. The problem is that we're not identified the same way. And also, we don't put in nearly as much work as what our husbands do, or your spouse, whoever it is. So, like, my husband wakes up, like, super early every day. He comes home super late every day, working and doing this shit. He puts in his efforts and all of that. He goes on the detachments. He goes on the deployments. Like, he has been physically in all of this all the way. Me, I am inconvenienced because I have to move other places. And I can use that as part of my identity if I want. I can say I'm a military wife, and being a military wife makes me have to sacrifice my career and sacrifice where I want to live and, maybe sacrifice this or that, different things, but it doesn't give me the right to say, I'm a military wife, therefore I get to claim the successes of my husband. I recently have been also thinking about this, and it's a same sort of thing, and I talked to my mom about this, so I know she's on board, but I was a product of a teen mom, and being a product of a teen mom, there were just certain things that I was very aware of at certain stages in my life. So, like, in high school, I, have from, I guess, probably 6th grade, middle school, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to party, and I'm not going to have sex. Like, I don't want to be a teenage mother like my mom. And I had this perspective of, if it could have happened to my mom, it can happen to me, sort of thing, right? So I have this identity of being the product of a teenage mother. Now, my mother was a great mother. It wasn't like I had one of those crazy crackhead moms, okay? But even still, like, there was just, expectations in my life that I was going to fuck up, that I was going to get pregnant like my mom. And to be honest, the statistics were against me. The statistics were that I would get pregnant and fuck up and not do anything with my life, right? So I totally didn't want to be a part of that. And I had friends along the way that were like, yeah, we don't want to drink either. And then they started to drink. And then I get another group of friends, yeah, we don't want to drink either. And then they would start to drink. And then it was like, bye, Allison. And I ended up being really bitter and really bitchy about that sort of thing. But they didn't have a teenage mother, so they could still sit there and think to themselves, you know what, that wouldn't happen to me. Like, I can drink and go to parties and have sex and be a teenager and do normal teenage things and still go on to live a very great life, because that won't actually happen to me. When you're a product of it, you know that it can happen to you. So I carried that with me for so long, and that was such a big part of my identity for such a long time. And then once I got into my like mid-20s range and I really started to like have a professional career, I've always gotten this. When people would find out that my mom was a teenage mother, they would give her all the credit. And so this is the part where I'm like, I already had a conversation with my mom. She knows that I've said this sort of thing. Now, I don't mind my mom getting credit to some extent because, yeah, she could have been a horrible mother and I could not have ended up the way that I did, for sure. She made sure that I was in a good home environment and all that sort of stuff to put me on a path to success, right? But after 18 years old, my mom doesn't get credit anymore. Everything that I do, like, I'm responsible for. If I fuck up, it's not going to be like, oh, it's because your mom was a teenage mother. No, it's going to be because you're a fucking idiot and you fucked up and here are the consequences, right? So why, if I have to take the bad consequences, why does she get to have all the credit for my good consequences? And the last straw was kind of on the job that I was working on in LA, and it was kind of the first time I was like, I am no longer identifying as this, because it was kind of like this thing that I've identified with for so long and I carried with me, and I used it as like an excuse to not to go to parties, to not, have certain friendships and things like that. And I was like, I can no longer identify with being the product of a teenage mom anymore, because it doesn't matter. I've already gone beyond what anybody expect I would. Even if I get knocked up tomorrow, it doesn't matter. I'm of age. I can figure it out, right? It would be hard, but it's not like I'm 17 doing this anymore. And so I was working at this job, and my boss found out, we're having like conversation about life stories, whatever. My boss was like, oh, your mom was a teenage mom? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, well, tell her she did a great job, like, of raising a great young lady, And it's like, I know when people say that, it's 100% a compliment, not only to my mother, but to me as well. But I was just like, okay, because in that moment, it's just like, my mom had nothing to do with any of this. This, my presence here, everything that I've done here has been me. This is all just me. This is nothing about my mom at this point. I've been living on my own for like however many years now. Like, give me a fucking break. So anyway, there's certain things that it's just like, okay, it's no longer suiting you. You have to drop it and you have to figure out what's yours. Because, like I said, in that scenario, it wasn't even my identity. Like, yeah, the product of a teenage mother, I guess, but it's just like my mom's just getting all the credit for everything great that I do. You're welcome, Mom. But it's like, you have to own now who you are. And so I'm like, okay, I'm no longer that. I don't live in my hometown anymore. If people from my hometown want to still view me as something like that, then that is totally fine. Like, you can't control how other people think about you. But I can control how I present myself and what I want people to see, which we're going to get into next week. And so I'm going to wrap it up. What I want you guys to do this week is a little bit of homework. And the question I have written down here is, so what is my identity and why does this matter? Okay? How do you see yourself? Or how do you want to see yourself? What are you seeing right now and what is that? So I want you to kind of paint a picture of who you are. I'm a very visual person, so in my mind this works, okay? So when I think of who I am, there is a distinct picture that I have, okay? So I'm going to give you an example, and we're going to talk more about this next week. But, I enjoy jazz music. When I say that, I have a very distinct picture in my head of what that is. What is your picture of me enjoying jazz music? I might give you more information to complete that picture because I realize that jazz is kind of broad. So I enjoy jazz music. I specifically enjoy more vintage, like standards, like Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald. I also enjoy a little bit more modern jazz, like David Brubeck. Even I guess more later again, like Sidney Bechet. Like, there's certain jazz stuff that I like. Okay. And then when I go and listen to jazz, what sort of environments do I like? I like speakeasies. I enjoy even concert halls, sure, but I enjoy dressing up and going out. I enjoy cocktails while I listen to jazz. I enjoy cocktails and cigars while I listen to jazz, okay? As I say more, I'm giving you a better picture of what I want you to see when I tell you that I like jazz. And it is a part of my identity. So our identity is made up of our likes, our dislikes. It's made up of the sort of art that we like. It's made up of the sort of like entertainment, recreation that we do. It's the thing that is beyond just the basic, okay? So you can say that you like Mexican food, okay? Okay, so you like Mexican food. That only tells me so much. If you say that you like Taco Tuesdays and half off margaritas, that's going to give me a whole different picture of who you are. If you're saying that, I like Mexican food and it's more authentic Mexican food, like we go to this specific restaurant that does this sort of thing, it's like a certain sort of picture that you want me to see that makes it more uniquely you and not just, oh, I enjoy enchiladas. Okay, yeah, lots of people enjoy enchiladas, When you say enchilada, I'm just picturing a plate of enchiladas, If you say, oh, yeah, my favorite restaurant is this place, and we go there for pitchers of margaritas and Taco Tuesday, I'm going to get a whole different idea of who your identity is. Or if you're someone who likes Mexican food, but you like a little bit more upscale Mexican food, you're going to do this sort of thing. So it's much more than what your likes and dislikes, what sort of entertainment you like. There's certain things where it can be more simple. So if someone told me that they were an Alabama fan, boom, right away. I'm like, okay, you're crazy. Alabama football is nuts, and it is an entire identity that people take on. So that is because it's like a culture, I can have a better idea. But yeah, so I want you guys to think about that for next week, about just the sort of things that you enjoy, the sort of things that you don't enjoy, because that also says a lot about your identity. I talked about my cousin earlier who is a very picky eater, and I say that because I used to be a very picky eater. And so, you take that on as part of your identity, because there's like, it's uncomfortable when people want you to go out to eat and you don't know what to eat, and that was part of my identity, being such a picky eater. I was personally embarrassed by it because then people wouldn't invite me out. I had a group of friends that would go have sushi, and I was never invited because I didn't like it, and they knew I wasn't going to eat anything there. So like stuff like that started to bother me. So I was like, okay, I need to start broadening my horizons. And I would just start telling people like, oh, I'm picky, but I can find something on the menu. And even if that meant I ate a plate of French fries for dinner, like that's what I did, so that I could like be social and hang out with people. So, we can change our identity, we can change our likes and dislikes and all of that, but all of those sorts of things, help paint a picture of who we are and what we bring forth to other people. So I just want you guys to think about that for next week. And it's gonna get more into the identity talk, okay? So thank you so much for listening to another week's episode. Please like, subscribe, comment, check out my social media, go to my website page, subscribe for the monthly emails, check out the blog page. I have a blog posted now. Subscribe so that when I post a blog, you will get a notification. But yeah, I just thank you guys so much for being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Cheers. I'll see you soon. Bye.